Welcome back, everyone. We are doing another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. Today, new to me, author, and maybe new to you, author as well, William Shaul is here, and he's going to read from his Christian mystery romance. But before we get into that, welcome, William. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you came today. We saw each other recently at a festival, and it was really cool to meet you. And I love that you write multiple genres because I do too. So tell me about how your writing journey began.
The writing journey began with actually a second novel. I started it over 30 years ago and never got very far with it. But about a dozen years ago, I got more serious and I started writing what's become my first published novel, Consuming Revenge. It was started or generated from walking through a revolving door at the Renaissance Center downtown Detroit every day, and all of a sudden I realized something could happen to a character in that door. And in this book, it happens to a character. So that's where it all
That's fun.
started.
That's
But
super
I've been
fun.
writing for all different ages, all different genres that you already mentioned. And I found that it's just such a joy to share my thoughts, share my ideas. I've been a teacher for 30 years, so I've been involved in sharing my thoughts and my ideas. And now to do it in print is really a different avenue for me, and I want to thoroughly enjoy. I retired in April, and this is to be
Excellent.
almost the full-time job, but I am
Isn't that
teaching.
nice? When
Well,
you
I
get
thought
to
it was going to be
do,
nice, but too
when
many
you
other
get to,
things got in the way.
yeah, well, when you get to do what you love after retirement, that's a good
Yes,
thing. That's a
that
good
is
thing.
for sure.
So you write in the Christian genre or Christian scope, I should say, which means although this is a mystery romance, it is also what we call a clean romance, correct?
I would say that's the accurate statement.
Okay, awesome. Um, what would you say is the reading age group for this book? Could teenagers read it, or is it more for the adult audience?
I've kind of targeted this to teens through adults.
Okay,
I had a pastor read it, one of my pre-readers, and he couldn't wait to give it to his 13-year-old teenage daughter to read. So it's really for
perfect.
all ages.
That's great.
It fits I think both. Um, so I'm very interested to see what it goes out and see how many people respond, whether they're the teens reading or the adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting the stamp of approval from your pastor is a pretty good idea.
That worked out well, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing you read. So today you're going to be reading from Consuming Revenge. Please, when you're ready, take the microphone and read aloud.
Ready, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire. Nothing is as somber as the triplet of echoing eruptions from the barrels of the arms borne by an honor guard at the funeral marking the passing of a fallen veteran. Commander Lane Stewart had been blessed to have heard that woeful chorus on only 3 occasions. The first was at the funeral of the love of his life, Angie. Every detail of that rain-soaked day 8 years ago was etched into his memory as if it happened yesterday. That day lives in his mind constantly. That day when he said goodbye to the one he had pledged his love, his honor, and his all to on their wedding day nearly 15 years before. Only two truths helped him survive that dark time. First, he knew that the never quenched appetite of the detestable, aggressive cancerous tumor that ravaged Angie's body during the last month of her life would never bring her pain again. And second, he knew that she was in heaven, waiting for him to join her before the throne of God. And now the second occasion, the funeral of two men, two of his men, men whom he commanded, men whom he sent into harm's way, men who left wives, children, and parents behind, men who should be home today with their families, men who were full of life, vim, and vigor, men who did not deserve to be laid to rest so many years before their time. Marty Bacone, a father, a good man, a patriotic American, a Marine, a survivor of 3 tours in Afghanistan, now gone. Billy de la Cruz, an immigrant from Chile, a man who loved America as much as any native-born person Lane knew, an Army Ranger, father of 2 of the sweetest twin 6-year-old girls imaginable, now gone also. Taps. That mournful, reverential final salute to those who were taken from the living, who were occupying caskets all too soon, and who would be sorely missed. He was roused from his musing by the touch on his elbow. He turned to see Barney Turco, perhaps the only person with whom he could share the thoughts that raced through his mind on this challenging day. We should meet Marty's and Billy's families. Yes, of course, Barney. The look on the faces of Marty's family showed the emptiness, the hollowness, and the hopelessness of those who have no assurance of meeting their loved ones again on the other side of the grave. Lane struggled to understand how people without a personal relationship with the Lord could function on days like this. Billy's family was grieving, but Lane could see that beyond the tears and the reddened eyes, there was peace. That peace that passes all understanding. About 4 years ago, Billy attended Lane's church on a Sunday morning and came face to face with his need for a Savior. From that first Sunday, he never missed a service, except when his duty to the police force required him to be elsewhere. Within 1 year, every member of Billy's family had also asked Jesus to forgive them of their sin and be their Savior. Today, the faces of the De La Cruz family spoke volumes of the peace that Jesus brings. Barney and Lane were among the last to leave the gravesite. Eventually, they settled into Barney's vintage vehicle and began the slow journey down the cemetery's gravel lanes and onto the street. As they hit the pavement and accelerated to the posted speed limit, Lane turned to his closest friend and asked, "Are you prepared to meet with the rest of the ITU?" They all agreed to gather at the sirloin pit after the funeral. "Arnold is holding the party room for us like he usually does, although I'm not quite sure the party room label is fitting for today." Barney answered without taking his eyes off the light noontime traffic. "As ready as I'll ever be." The 2 men silently traveled the 5 or so miles to the restaurant. Both were deep in thought about the events of the past week. Lane had not lost a single officer since founding the Inmate Transport Unit, or ITU, over 5 years ago. The only injury anyone had ever suffered was when Lane himself twisted his ankle during the annual Pioneer Day softball game 2 summers ago. But that all ended Friday. The details of what should have been a routine delivery played in his mind over and over. The arraignment of a suspected drug trafficker by the name of Freddie Henderson was scheduled for that day. Not only was he a well-known wholesale cocaine dealer, but the disfigurement of his nose from long-term nose candy abuse was so dramatic that both friends and enemies referred to him simply as the Nose. His arraignment was scheduled for Friday morning. Usually, it would have occurred via video conferencing, but a violent thunderstorm knocked out the satellite hookup on Wednesday night. Because the court appearance had to occur before the weekend, the ITU was responsible for providing transportation from the McAdam Detention Facility to the downtown courthouse. That duty fell to Team Gamma. Marty, the team leader, and Billy were assigned to make the delivery, while Melody, the third member of Team Gamma, was tasked with coordinating the logistics for the arraignment from the ITU headquarters. All went according to the shipping manifest until a 3-car accident cordoned off a part of the delivery route. As Team Gamma's logistics officer, Melody activated the predetermined alternate route, which took the unmarked van directly past an interstate construction job site. As Marty slowed to negotiate a sharp turn, a runaway cement mixer crashed into the passenger side of the van, crushing both Marty and Billy to death. The Nose, seated next to Billy in the third row of the van, escaped the collision with some superficial minor cuts from flying glass. Barney jumped when Barry spoke and broke the silence. Well, it seems like everyone is here from the look of the parking lot. He mumbled an affirmative response as Barney found one of the two last open parking spots at the far end of the building. They entered the restaurant's lobby and were met by Arnold, the owner of the Sterling Pit, and a staunch supporter of the inmate transport unit. He nodded silently, extended a warm handshake to each man, and pointed to the party room with the tip of his head. They nodded back, completed a silent but greatly appreciated greeting that a dear friend gives on a day like this. The sight of the 5 small tables in the room was a stark reminder of the size of the loss the ITU had just endured. When the entire unit met at the Sterling Pit each week for lunch, Lane, commander of the ITU, sat alone at one table, while the 3 members of each team sat together at the others. Today was just as usual, except for Team Gamma's table on the left side of the room. Instead of Marty, Billy, and Melody chatting and laughing, there were 2 glasses turned upside down on the vacant table. On the right side of the room, Team Alpha sat silently at their table. Barney joined them. Next to Team Alpha was Team Beta, who also sat silently. The table in the middle of the room was understood to be for Team Delta, the only all-female ITU team. They, too, sat in silence. The entire room was as quiet as a group of children waiting to see the school principal after a childhood prank went awry. As Lane took his customary place and looked at the 9 police officers seated in the room, the door opened and Melody entered. He immediately could see in her eyes the toll that today's funeral had taken upon her. He'd only seen her eyes moisten once before. Those same tears were shed in a hospital room when the droning tone of the medical equipment announced the end of Angie's battle with cancer. Melody and Angie could not have been closer if they were sisters. Lane rose and greeted Melody, taking her by the hand to lead her to his table, where he helped her with a chair. She smiled and mouthed a thank you. As she settled in her chair, her eyes welled up again at the sight of the 2 inverted glasses on the otherwise empty Team Gamma table. Sensing the increasing awkwardness, Barney stood and addressed the group. I think we should all share our fond memories of these 2 brave men in the spirit in which I believe they would want us to remember them. However, first, I would like to thank Melody for joining us today. She barely nodded towards him in recognition of his kindness. She briefly looked at Lane, then looked down into her purse, searching for one last fresh handkerchief she hoped it contained. From around the room, the memories of the fallen soldiers flowed. When the stories trickled to a halt, all eyes turned to Lane, who had not spoken a word since his arrival. The grief-torn commander stood, eyed each of them, and began slowly. I could share many stories of the antics of both Marty and Billy. However, I would like to say 3 things instead. First, I take full responsibility for the events last Friday. Mel, I know that as logistics officer, you planned the primary and alternate routes. However, remember that the approval of all the plans ultimately rests with me. Mel, the tragic results are not your fault. Melody nodded and weakly smiled at him. Second, we all have a responsibility to Marty and Billy. We must redouble our focus and concentration to ensure we never experience a delivery interruption or delay again. The team leaders and I must work even more closely together in planning and executing each delivery operation. Finally, there's the incomplete investigation of last Friday's events. I'm not satisfied we have genuinely devoted enough energy to figure out exactly what happened. We've got some work to do, but for now, go home and get some rest. I'll see you in the morning at 7 o'clock sharp in the box. As I said, we've got work to do.
Wow,
In conclusion, chapter
that
1.
that is a very intriguing beginning to your story. Um, where did you find inspiration for this book?
it came, as I mentioned earlier, from walking through a revolving door, what could happen to a character. Beyond that, I think it's just my general love for TV cop shows and just
Okay,
look at it,
okay,
take kind of a different take, a different spin on it. Um, I also have grown a little frustrated at times with some of the Christian fiction that's out of the market. I
okay.
have found that some of it is big on the fiction, not much on the Christian side. I don't want to be overly preachy here, but I want to deliver a message that was not brazen, but was there, that
Sure.
would encourage people in their walk with the Lord. And I believe this type of fiction has a place in the Christian community, and that's really what my one of my purposes of writing this was.
I think it's an excellent idea. And I agree with you. I think we're blurring the lines of what is Christian fiction and not. So I think it's a good idea that you're focusing, if you're going to write in Christian fiction, that you're focusing on the Christianity part of it as well as the rest of the story.
I read a inspirational novel a year and a half ago. One character went to church once, one character prayed once, and that was all the Christianity there. It was clean, like you talked about earlier,
Sure.
but I would not have called it a Christian novel or even inspirational.
Got it.
So, without being over the top and too preachy, um, I do want to bring that in as an important
I
part of
think
the
it's
characters' lives.
right. And I think it's important, especially writing in the genre, that you shine some emphasis on that. I mean, that is what you're trying to write about. So I think it's
That
a
that
good
it
idea.
is.
I think
That
it's a
it
good
is.
idea. Who was your favorite character to write in this book?
My favorite character. Um, I'm trying not to give too much away, but there are two mysterious characters,
Okay.
um, and they each go by a nickname, even when they talk with one another. And I think they were my favorite because I wrote it in such a way that you don't even know if they're male or female, and the
That's fun.
readers are really in the dark, even as the two meet for breakfast and talk because of their nicknames that are gender neutral. You have no idea who they are, and you can't figure out what they are elsewhere in the book, but you don't know who is who. I think
Got it.
that was my most intriguing part, is keeping the pronouns out of their conversation without making too stilted, try to make it still real. That was really a favorite part. And probably one other thing, the romantic interest of Lane, whom we've not met yet in chapter one,
Right.
is named Danielle O'Shaughnessy. She goes by Danny throughout the book. She listened to old time radio when she was raised in Lebanon. That's how she learned English
Oh,
as a
okay.
child. I'm a great
That's a
fan of
fun
old time radio.
detail.
So, but at one point, she mentions her love of old time radio to Lane, but eventually that love saves a person's life. And bringing that full circle to something I enjoy and bring it to the book was really intriguing, and I really enjoyed it. Only
Okay,
a few times
now,
have I sat back and said, that was good. And that was one of
yeah,
those
yeah.
times.
Now I'm very intrigued to read this book because I'd like to see how that circle happens. Thank you so much, Bill, for coming on the program today. It was so nice to have you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity,
And I look
and
forward to having you coming back and reading again.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much, Diana.
Thank
Take care.
you. Thank you.